Well, the big loser, and I mean big loser, in California last night was Donald Trump. And the big loser in the United States Congress today was Donald Trump when the House of Representatives cast an historic vote against Donald Trump's war, with some Republicans joining all Democrats in a war powers resolution vote against Donald Trump's war. The resolution says Congress directs the president to remove United States armed forces from hostilities against the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Republican Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was trying to avoid this vote in the House, which is why he sent the House on recess early just to avoid that vote. But as I said on this program at the time, when leadership is forced to send members of Congress home to their districts to avoid casting a difficult vote, that means you're on your way to losing that vote by an even greater margin when those representatives come back from their districts, which is exactly what happened. Congressman Gregory Meeks, the top Democrat in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, told the Washington Post that Mike Johnson's delay of the vote actually helped build support for today's historic vote to stop Donald Trump's war. As of today, Donald Trump probably doesn't realize just how badly his Trump candidates did last night in the campaigns for California governor and for mayor of Los Angeles. Donald Trump congratulated his candidate for governor today, saying congratulations to Steve Hilton on coming in first last night in the California vote for governor. In that social media post, Donald Trump called Steve Hilton a winner, which is something Steve Hilton has never been. Steve Hilton has never won anything. And the only other time Steve Hilton considered running for office was as a member of the British Parliament. But that campaign never even got started. The decline and fall of the Republican Party in California is now so complete that to field a candidate for governor this year, they had to wait for Steve Hilton to leave British politics, where he was one of the top advisors pushing one of the stupidest, not one of, the absolute stupidest British idea of the 21st century, Brexit, the economically disastrous withdrawal of Britain from the European Union. Steve Hilton, running for governor of California after finally becoming an American citizen, running for governor of a state that is a bigger economy than the economy of the United Kingdom, is like Steve Bannon or Stephen Miller running for mayor of London. Because of the unusual structure of what California calls its primary election, Democrats and Republicans run together. They ran together last night on the same ballot. And as of the vote count last night, Donald Trump was right. Steve Hilton was the first on the scoreboard, but that's like being first on the scoreboard at the end of the first quarter of a basketball game. Actually, it's even less significant than that. As of now, Steve Hilton has 27.6% of the vote, and Javier Becerra has 25.6% of the vote, which means that the two candidates on the ballot in November are very likely to be Steve Hilton and Javier Becerra. The next biggest vote getter is Democrat Tom Steyer with 20% of the vote. So all of those Steyer votes would be added to the Becerra vote total, the Democratic Becerra vote total in November, which would bring the Democrat up to 45% of the vote. Another Republican candidate in the race got 11% of the vote, which reasonably should be added to Steve Hilton's total expected vote in November, which would bring Steve Hilton all the way up to a whopping 39% of the vote in November if he's lucky. But there were a dozen other Democrats on the ballot last night, including Eric Swalwell. And those Democrats together accounted for another 12 to maybe 15% of the vote. And all of those votes will go to the Democrat in November, pushing Becerra's vote total in November up to 60% or more. So as of tonight, the likelihood of Donald Trump's Republican candidate for governor in California is that he will lose in November by 20 points at least. Same thing with the Los Angeles mayor's race. Donald Trump did not bother to congratulate his clownish candidate for mayor of Los Angeles, Spencer Pratt, today for coming in second in the vote count as of last night. Los Angeles County is the single largest vote counting entity in the United States of America. More votes are counted, cast and counted in Los Angeles County than anywhere else in the country. And most of those votes arrive in envelopes that have to be opened and read with signatures matched to voters' signatures on record, and that process takes a while to count them. But as of tonight, with votes still being counted, Mayor Karen Bass has 35% of the vote. Donald Trump's candidate for mayor of Los Angeles, Spencer Pratt, has 30% of the vote, and Democrat Nithya Raman has 23% of the vote. It is extremely unlikely that Spencer Pratt is going to get any more votes in November if he is on the ballot in November. So Spencer Pratt will be lucky in November if he gets 30% of the vote. When Karen Bass's vote is combined just with Nithya Raman's vote, Karen Bass would get 58% of the vote in November. But there are 5 other Democrats on the ballot for mayor who have more than 7% of the vote. So if you add that 7% to Karen Bass's total, she is easily right now on track to get 65% of the vote in November if people just vote for the party that they voted for yesterday. And so Donald Trump will at some point discover we are not going to have a Trump-endorsed mayor of Los Angeles, and we are not going to have a Trump-endorsed governor of California. There could not be a greater curse on a candidate running in Los Angeles or running statewide in California than the endorsement of Donald Trump. Donald Trump lied today in the White House when he was asked by CNN's Caitlin Collins about the Trump slush fund. Donald Trump, whose seemingly fraudulent lawsuit created the slush fund, pretended he knows nothing about it now.
Is the $1.8 billion DOJ fund dead, or is it on hold?
It's, I'd have to ask the lawyers. I don't know. I know one thing, the weaponization.
But what's your
Are you talking about
it?
the weaponization fund?
Yeah, what's your decision?
The weaponization fund, as far as I'm concerned, was a beautiful thing. It was something I didn't make it, but I heard that. I thought that was the greatest thing because people like you have abused our people so badly. The fake news like CNN, like the New York Times and like others, have abused our people.
Were critical of it, Mr. President, on Capitol Hill.
Have abused our people so badly, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You used to be a conservative. She was a conservative from Alabama. Can you believe it? But CNN, in particular, CNN does such false reporting. But now they have new ownership, so maybe it'll straighten it out.
Thanks to Donald Trump's corrupt manipulation of federal law, including antitrust law, David Ellison, who used his father's money to buy the combined companies of Paramount and CBS, has also used his father's money to buy Warner Brothers, which owns CNN. David Ellison has now, in the words of Scott Pelley, murdered 60 Minutes for Donald Trump. David Ellison yesterday fired 60 Minutes correspondent, the former CBS News anchor Scott Pelley, for Donald Trump. That's why that happened. That's the new ownership Donald Trump is looking forward to when David Ellison gets control of CNN. In his rambling response to the question about his desire to give unlimited amounts of federal money to his supporters who attacked the Capitol, tried to kill Capitol police officers, and tried to kill Vice President Mike Pence, Donald Trump said they went there with love.
People that went there with love. They went there with love.
So there he is, rambling along in his praise of the people who attacked the Capitol for him. And he says, you heard him say this, he said, people that went there too. And he stops himself right there after that word too, because he realizes he cannot say what they went there to do. He knows what they went there to do. And so he abandons that sentence that he started and changes it to, They went there with love. Let's watch Donald Trump at his sharpest there, catching himself in the middle of that sentence and switching it.
People that went there with love. They went there with love.
He knows what they went there to do, and he knows he can't say it. He knows that Special Prosecutor Jack Smith indicted him for conspiracy against the United States of America to try to overturn that election, and he knows that's what those people went there to do, overturn that election for him, kill the vice president for him, kill Capitol Police officers for him. And the man who demonstrates every day that he has no idea what love is tells the lie that the most hateful, violent protesters who have ever risen up against the federal government in Washington, D.C. went there with love. Marco Rubio's unofficial campaign for president or vice president has, of course, been underway since the first day of the Trump presidency.